Max is smiling.
It's weird that he's smiling.
Because he never really smiles.
It's not the vibe for him.
No, I like him as an angry little Dutch man. Every time he comes on the radio, it's just completely incomprehensible. Like, what is he? I'm so glad they have subtitles. Hello everyone, welcome back to the 5th episode of Grid Gals. We just finished watching the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix here, and so we're going to go ahead and recap the race weekend. There were a lot of events that happened on and off the track. So I think a good place to start is probably talking about the overall practice and maybe some of the things that came up leading up to the race weekend. One notable event that happened off the track that was a very notable event for this Grand Prix that we thankfully have not seen at other Grand Prix and hope to not see again. There was a missile strike about 10 kilometers away from the track. There were some concerns from the drivers about whether or not this race should actually take place and if the Grand Prix was going to continue as planned, with the drivers staying at the circuit, discussing with team bosses, people from the FIA. I think actually the CEO of F1 was there as well. They were there till I think past 2 a.m. Ultimately, the decision was made to go ahead with the race. I guess, yeah, that's something that I'm not used to seeing just because I think a lot of the sports that we watch are mainly like US-based sports. And so the larger geopolitical climate doesn't really get involved. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it reminds you that even though you're going all over the globe, like you're not in a bubble.
Yeah. And we saw that with Russia because that race has been pulled as well as Mazepin being out. Mm-hmm. Hopefully smooth sailing from here. Thankfully,
there was a safe race.
Yeah.
No more disruptions throughout the weekend. Everyone's safety was the priority, and it looks like there weren't any worries with that. You know, I'm surprised we didn't come out strong with Vettel being out again.
I know. I thought that's how we were going to have to start.
I mean, he's still out. It's a bummer, you know. Obviously, he's still out for COVID-19. Hulkenberg is still, as the commentators say, deputized in, which always cracks me up. To put it that way, but I mean, obviously I'd love to see him, but the Aston Martins aren't really performing, so it's a little less sad than normal,
right,
to have him missing out.
But I feel like he'd be doing better than Hulkenberg is right now because Hulkenberg is strongly in the back.
I mean, I sure hope so. I'll be really disappointed.
Well, actually Stroll finished behind Hulkenberg, which is just...
Really? I guess I wasn't paying attention to that half of the grid.
His little clash there with Albon.
Right.
Put him at the last spot of actually finishing the race. So,
well, I think before we get too far down shitting on Stroll, which, you know, we can certainly come back and do that, but maybe we should talk through qualifying and what that looked like this weekend.
Yeah, so qualifying, there were a couple shakeups that happened during the qualifying session yesterday. I think one of the most notable ones was Schumacher had crashed. So they had red flagged the session, and obviously we learned now that he's okay. But so he didn't even place in qualifying yesterday. And then I think another big shocking thing that happened was Lewis was out in Q1. You know, we haven't seen that qualifying finish from Lewis in a long time, I don't think.
I mean,
I'm not think I've ever seen that from him.
At least since we've been watching, it was embarrassing. Definitely, especially considering how well his teammate did.
Yeah.
You know, I think George Russell was...
He's in 6th?
6th, yeah. So solidly in Q3. Mm-hmm. I mean, midway up the grid for Q3. But to have Hamilton down in 16th, that's got to sting.
We haven't really even heard what happened because it doesn't seem like it's the car with Russell doing so well. So
is it another magic button?
It's gotta be. It's the only logical answer. Maybe he just had a really off day, but that seems very bizarre. Even when he's sick, he's driven better than he has this weekend, at least.
So, yeah, we saw some better driving in the race today, but definitely a very disappointing qualifying, definitely for Hamilton, but even for Mercedes overall. I think they were probably pretty happy with George's performance, but yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow. And then Schumacher's crash. I think they said 33 Gs, so
it's huge.
Still really serious.
And his first big crash in F1.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was really scary.
Went to the hospital out of precaution, but ultimately was fine. Did not race this weekend due to the crash, but
Another important highlight would be Ocon up right behind Max, which was exciting to see. It's a great spot for him.
Yeah, I think everybody was really impressed with Alpine's finish in 5 and 7. I mean, you're out qualifying a Mercedes. Like, granted, Mercedes this year isn't as competitive, but still, that's got to feel really good.
And he's out qualifying Alonso, and Alonso's just a legend in this sport, so that was pretty shocking to see, too.
Yeah, no, Ocon had a great qualifying, and I think it set him up really well for the race, which we can get into in a second because those Alpines were fun to watch. Any last thoughts on qualifying before we move to the race?
I think McLaren had a better showing than they had last week, but still being right on the edge. They got out in Q2. Norris a little worse off than he did last week, so I was hoping that seeing the race they would have the opportunity to move up at least into the points. We gotta get it. I'm glad that we needed to get ourselves into the points.
I think the other big one for the Red Bull fan here.
I know, Checo.
First pole.
His first pole, I guess it is his first career pole.
Mm-hmm. He's had wins. He's never had a pole.
Wow, yeah. That was really exciting. I was excited to see him finally... Mary's going to be upset with me on this one, but last race I feel like he wasn't really pulling his weight, and maybe we don't know if it was the car or not, but he did really well today. Max ended up in 4th, which was a little disappointing, and then you have the 2 Ferraris in between, so Leclerc and Sainz. Definitely stacked to be a good race.
I know going into it, I had a lot of hope that they had fixed that, and it seems like they did. The race today fixed the issues with I think it was the fuel pump for the Red Bull car, so it was obviously very similar of the top contenders there to what we saw in the qualifying session last time, but still some nerves probably for you, Catherine, going into the race today.
Yeah, I was very worried if it was actually going to be the fuel gauge that was the issue that they fixed. Fingers crossed that it wasn't the engines, and I think it turned out to be just the fuel gauge, and hopefully no more issues moving forward. Although we did see Tsunoda fall out in the race at some point, and I don't know that we've heard what happened to him.
Because I was surprised to see him back of the grid to start. I think he had some issues with the car in qualifying yesterday.
Yeah.
So, which is a sad day, me becoming a Yuki fan here. I'm glad I did not pick him for my fantasy team.
You know what? I think I've hopped on that train as well. After watching Drive to Survive, his episode's really good. I think it really shows his personality and his growth and just how young he is too. I couldn't believe it. So I'm starting to hop on the train.
Well, everyone's welcome to hop on the Yuki train. The more the merrier.
All aboard.
Because you're going to have to pick new favorites right now. Although you're rooting really hard for Ferrari this whole race. It's a little disappointing to see. I felt a little ganged up on.
Yeah, let's cut to a few clips from the recording that we did during the race.
And here is the change in 2022. He only has to give that back if he wants to.
What?
The director will no longer tell drivers to give a position back if they cut a corner or take a position off track. It is entirely down to the driver.
What?
That makes
So why the fuck
sense.
would you ever give it back?
That makes absolutely no sense.
You just have to be morally guided.
Morally guided?
Fucking kidding
Did they just
me?
say there's a penalty though?
One of the things that I thought was interesting that commentators said that I hadn't heard yet for this season was there's a new rule in 2022. The racers are not mandated to give the position back if they pass off the track. Sounds like, and from the race today, they get a penalty if they don't, but I know we were going back and forth for a little bit on the moral code aspect of it.
I thought that was the odd thing is, I guess the way it's stated in the rules is it's up to the moral obligation of the driver and they can decide whether or not they want to give it back. I think it makes sense that there's a trade-off between track position and a penalty. I think it was it looked like 5-second penalty for doing that. I think it happened a couple of times throughout this race, but just a very odd, that's not how I would expect things to be in the rules. It'll be interesting to see how that plays into the strategies this season.
I definitely think it'll be in a strategy game because if you give it back, you can choose when to give it back. The moral code is
just a weird...
Which driver is going to be while I'm racing, my moral code is telling me to give the position back. We were going back and forth a little bit about this during the race, but I can't pick a single driver in my head that's going to be I'm going to give the position back to them just because I feel morally obligated.
No, I mean, that's the reason you're in the top racing sport. You're an incredibly competitive person. You're not just going to give up a competitive advantage. Granted, if your team tells you to, different if they weigh out the strategic advantages and disadvantages around like the penalty and whatnot. But just a really weird way to phrase a rule.
Yeah, I think it's all going to be calculated. Like, is it worth the 5-second penalty or giving the spot back? I think you have to weigh your options there.
With that new rule in play, a lot of, we saw, since it's a street race, like very fast and people were going off the track. And so that came into play a couple of times. I didn't see this because he was toward the back of the grid anyway, but Yuki was out. Like, I think it sounded like he had car trouble and like pretty early on the race. Obviously, knowing that things were happening towards the front of the grid, they didn't really cover that. But yeah, he just dropped out. So it doesn't bode well for the Red Bull engine, seeing that happen to him yet again.
Yeah, I wonder what it was. I mean, we saw 6 cars out, so we saw one of every single engine out this race due to some type of engine trouble, because we saw Daniels out, Alonso
lap
got out.
37 was just not a good lap, because 3 cars dropped on whether or not they were in lap 37 or 38, and I think the first one was, we saw Alonso slow down, Bottas and Ricciardo all on that lap time, and it was just heartbreaking for all of them, because I think for the majority, I mean, Alonso and Ricciardo couldn't even make it back to the pit lane. At least Bottas was able to make it back to the pit lane, but they lost power so bad that they didn't even make it back there.
Yeah, and that's what brought out a safety car. It was just so bizarre, though, that, like, it happened to all 3 of them on the same lap. Because, I mean, I think we've seen it in other races where you're like, yeah, someone's engine dies or they lose power. Like, there's some technical... But it was so weird to see all 3 of them, like, one after another. Because, yeah, you're, like, looking at Alonso. He had been battling with Magnussen. And then at first, because you're like, what? Like, Magnussen has older tires. What's going on here? And then you're like, oh, shit, like, something's wrong with the car. And then you see, out of nowhere, Ricciardo's out on the side of the road. I mean, same thing. And then, like, they switch to Bottas in the pit lane. And you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, one of every engine out, all, like, within the same couple laps.
But
who knows what it is? Because, like, last race we saw, like, the Red Bulls go out at the same time.
Yeah.
We saw the Mercedes engine performing about the same level.
I do think before I mean, it was such a bummer for Alonso, too, because he was having a great race. And the first part of the race, I think it was the first, like, 12 or 15 laps, him and Ocon were battling with each other, which was actually really fun to watch, especially given the track. And, I mean, I think the commentators mentioned it too, like, really fun to watch as a fan, but as the team, they've got to be shitting themselves. Like, one wrong move, and you go from 2 point-scoring cars to, like, knocking each other out.
And they let it go on for about 15 laps, so that was a good piece of the race to watch. And then, I guess, some team...
They called them off.
Yeah.
Well, because Bottas started to get in the fray.
Yeah.
Omar, like, you could tell they would send the camera over to him at bits, and he was just, like, holding his head between his hands, trying not to get too nervous, because they had some close calls there.
Oh my god,
They really did.
And that would have been devastating.
And because they're doing so well right now, so it'd be a shame to have them both out just because, you know, 5 and 6, that's a good finish for them.
I'm shocked they never made content, given how many close calls they had and how tight the circuit is. Like, not only contact with each other, but contact with the wall. Because they came close a couple of times.
I wonder how their team debrief is going to be. I feel like that would be a tense one. Especially Ocon, and he's, like, been known to have sort of an attitude. And, I mean, Alonso's a character, so I'm sure he's not holding back either.
Yeah, well, I think I wish that McLaren got into the points. I think Norris had a phenomenal race, all things considered. I mean, it didn't hurt that a bunch of drivers were having engine troubles. I mean, heartbreaking for Ricciardo. I really hope that things turn around here. McLaren figures out with this not having a race next week what's going on with the car, because obviously you can see Mercedes doing well, or doing better than some of the other teams. So I think they can get back towards the top of the midfield, but they gotta change something.
But hey, you can feel good that Lando beat out Hammy.
The commentators just shitting on Hammy for getting a 10th place. They're like, and Hamilton in 10th.
Bringing home a solid 1 point. You're like 7 times world champ, and you're down in 10th. I mean, and also probably only in 10th because of all the cars that got out. Like, he could have very easily finished this race with no points.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And when's the last time he finished without points that wasn't a do not finish? Oh, you know what? It must have been when he went straight.
Yeah.
Okay.
answered my own question. But.
Yeah, it might have been.
The other magic button incident.
See, I was
The
really
original
looking-
magic button.
I was looking for Bottas to finish in front of Hamilton. That would have made my day.
Oh, that was. I mean, he was on track to. Like, Bottas
Yeah.
is having a great race.
I know.
I think our prediction's coming through true. Like, we both had said, either he's going to come out, have, like, a really strong start to the season and, like, be vying and competing up there for the Drivers' Championship, or he's just totally going to bomb. And I think that's... It's still early.
Well, do you
Not
think we
looking great.
should, you want to cue in and listen to our reactions on hearing the news of lap 37 and how we reacted to all of those driver dropouts?
Wow. They're going to
Yeah.
flag it?
Safety car? Safety car! Safety car!
Ricardo stuck out on track.
Well, glad I dropped him.
That's crazy that, like, 3 of their cars would just, like, kind of fall apart like that, though. Yeah, 20 seconds? Fuck.
Great start to the race, and they're going to call it a day for Valtteri. What is it?
What?
About lap 37 into
Yeah, 3 people's cars died.
Saudi Arabia, Joe, it has all gone off.
Well, there's going to be a safety car for where
Pick up
Ricardo
Ricardo.
has parked his car. I'm sure of it. They've got a safety car now. He can somehow call over the line, but is the pit lane going to be
That's perfect for Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we saw in the Formula 2 race
And Magnussen.
they had to close the pit entry because there was a crash. A lot of sparks coming off.
Oh
Oh, and Latifi.
no! Latifi's in the wall!
Whoa, who's in the wall?
Latifi.
Latifer!
That's 27. That's turn 27.
Oh, my
Is this the same? No, it's the same spot that Verstappen.
Yeah.
For Perez.
Crash.
Yeah.
Beautiful lap.
Virtual safety
Fuck Stroll. That man is a...
space at the apex.
Jesus.
To drive side by side through there with Lewis.
That man needs to be...
Dude, are you
Retired.
fucking kidding me? Stroll crashed.
Stroll crashed.
It was fucking Stroll. That's right. Fuck Lance Stroll.
Everyone is coming over to the fuck Lance Stroll bandwagon because what a major fuck up at the end of the race that just cost so many people some points.
I don't think anyone.
Oh my god.
No one hates Lance Stroll as much as Jack does.
He just has a very punchable face.
Mary liked his intro.
I know she.
I don't-
When you said he was attractive, I was actually.
No, I said he
almost-
had good angles. Honestly, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't like Lance Stroll. I don't want to like him. But if you didn't know him and you just watched the F1 intro this year, the cameraman was very kind to him. And the cameraman was not kind to everybody because some
Vettel's-
people look
Vettel's was
stupid.
bad.
I know. I know.
Why'd they do him like
Like,
that?
Stroll literally looks better than Vettel, and I'm pissed about it. Because Vettel, like, weirdly was, like, crossing his leg over
Yeah.
something. Like, he looked dumb.
It was odd.
He looked dumb.
Lando's was a little weird too.
I don't think Lando is like that.
He was like a
Physically attractive. Like,
teeny bopper heartthrob, you know?
Yeah, they-
It felt like a boy band.
Yes.
I still can't believe he has
Yes.
a girlfriend. Like it's just weird to me.
I mean, he technically is a grown man, but
Yeah, that's true. We're like talking about him like he is 15. He's like
23,
he's 23.
probably.
Yeah.
23, 24. I don't know, but
I felt like he was only 22, but I mean, potato at that point.
Yeah.
he can legally drink in the U.S., so.
Great driver. Still love him, but
Although Hammy's intro shot, it's fierce.
They
Looks great.
They did good things for him.
Max is smiling.
It's weird that he's smiling
'Cause he never
it's
really
not
smiles.
The vibe. It's not the vibe for him.
No, I like him as an angry little Dutch man. Every time he comes on the radio, it's just completely incomprehensible. Like, what is he? I'm so glad they have subtitles. I cannot understand
They
what he's
don't
saying.
get all of them though.
yeah.
I need better transcribing during the race. Also, quick complaint.
Yeah.
The race
hear it.
recaps. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's so many while the race is still happening, especially when we're down to the last 3 laps.
Stop showing replays.
I just want to see the race. Like, there's a race still happening and you're replaying what I've already seen. Like, at the end, sure, throw it in. But not...
Or even in the middle of the race where things
there's
like if
something
there's not
boring.
in the
Yeah,
middle
yeah.
of like an intense battle like there was at the end of the race between Shaw and Max.
Yeah.
God.
Which we should probably talk about.
Yeah.
The last 3 laps, I mean, as a Red Bull fan, very fun for me. Maybe not so much for our Ferrari gals, but...
It's all Lance's fault.
It was definitely a nail biter, so
Yeah, I think now we could cut to our live reaction of the race.
0.6 as we move into the final sector, and Leclerc ball in sector number 2. Here we go again. The shoe is on the other
What?
side.
What?
Where the fuck's the safety car?
Where is it?
What yellow flag?
Out of the final corner. Leclerc's going to get DRS. He's going to have to toe.
Oh, green flag. Yellow flag?
They
What?
won't be able to pass. They won't be able to pass into turn 1.
What's the yellow flag?
That means Verstappen could breathe easy for now. That was crucial. Leclerc would have had DRS and a chance.
What
to
just
find
happened?
Verstappen.
Yeah, what the fuck
yellow
is
flag,
on the track?
position of the yellow flag has meant that he has to just sit there. No DRS to attack.
Something with Stroll, I
chance to
think.
overtake anyway at turn 1.
That is killer.
That couldn't have worked better for Verstappen.
The timing is really unfortunate because Charles had DRS, could have passed Max potentially, but with the
Wow,
yellow
I'm
flag,
sorry. Wait, do we have that on record? That wait, are you
How
saying
gracious of you, Catherine, potentially.
are you
know-
saying that Max's victory was because Lance Stroll crashed?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. It was a close race though. I mean, that's what we've been wanting to see.
Fuck Lance Stroll.
Does he get like part of the points that Max got for being such a like a
Little
give him a
helper.
low
Team
help?
helper.
You know, he would need the points. Aston Martin really needs points, so.
They really.
Yeah, my prediction's looking real bad.
And also so sad for Albon because Latifi had already crashed earlier in the race, which it's hard to say with a straight face because I feel like he's in this place so close to the crashes of last season, and you know we here on this podcast don't support online harassment or bullying, and I felt really bad about Latifi like in all the aftermath
yeah,
of that. I
that
don't
was
think he
sad.
reserves that, but it just hit a little probably close to home for the Williams fans and the Williams team there to see him. And like street circuits, you're racing quickly, and one minor mistake can lead to something that tragic.
But I mean, it's not to go there, but it's both of the pay-to-play drivers that crashed today.
So shout out to the people who got there on skill. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, but so did Schumacher.
Yeah, that one's also like a little bit of nepotism too. It's not just pay to play. It's your dad's like the reigning champ.
Yeah, I mean, he's worked his way up, just like all the other drivers
Well,
have, though.
and he's not the only one who has a famous
A
racer
lot.
dad,
So many of them do.
including ya boy.
And Sainz,
Yeah,
Leclerc.
Does Max's dad have a different last name?
No.
Okay.
I think it's Jos Verstappen.
I don't know why I thought his dad like had a different last name for some reason.
And his girlfriend's dad too.
Yeah.
That's still weird.
I do think it's a little weird.
Not only do they look like siblings, but just her love of F1 drivers is a little weird.
The age gap too.
Yeah.
But mostly the fact that they look the same. Like, not even like siblings, like they kind of have the same face.
Yeah, like some of those things where it's like siblings are dating, you know, where they
Or it's like, you know when you would do those things in like elementary school where it takes a picture of you and shows you what you would look like if you were a dude?
yeah.
I feel like Max, like his girlfriend is what he would look like if he were a girl.
They should test it out with the Snapchat filter for sure.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Like, isn't there a TikTok trend of, like,
Yeah, this is what
what you would look
for-
like if you were a guy?
Oh yeah.
Do you think
They
you'd
have
be
to-
cute as a guy?
I mean, probably.
I feel like, okay, this is gonna be really weird. I feel like you'd be able to grow good facial hair. You have nice hair.
Thank you.
She definitely have like scruff. I could see her having
Yeah.
like some.
Like a good little
good facial
scruff.
I feel like you'd be clean shaven.
Yeah.
Jack.
Yeah. I don't know if I.
You like the classic clean cut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are. You are a cookie
Like if
cutter
you-
gal.
If you think of a slice of white bread embodied in a person, that is my type.
God, I never get tired of hearing that. It's like my favorite.
But you know, I think the most boring man who like thinks
Not
liking
necessarily-
sports is a personality.
Oh my gosh, not boring. Just like
Classic.
classic. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, like I still enjoy vanilla ice cream. You know, it's not too fancy. There's no like
Nothing wrong with
ripples
the
or
classic.
chunks. It's still tasty. I'm just all over the board.
Yeah,
We don't
got-
need to go there.
We also got very sidetracked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. You know, my man Latifi, something about the Williams team.
My man Latifi, you're adopting him now too? Jesus, you pick up all the strays.
I feel like when we watched the crash, you were like fucking Latifi again with this.
I think I was just more like no one's surprised.
Yeah.
Like I
Alright,
had
fair.
no one's surprised at Latifi,
Fair.
but I'm not angry at him because I think he he's gotten so much hate about his crashes in general that a little bit of a soft spot. I'm not going to go as far to call him and adopt him under my wing of the drivers that I support, but I just had a little soft spot for that crash, where the Stroll crash was just like, at the end, come on, especially when we're seeing some great racing at the front of the pack.
Got a soft spot for that safety hazard, huh? As long as it's not Stroll.
Anyways, how do you feel about Mazepin's crashes? He definitely got bullied online too.
Mazepin scratches. It's like, is it a race if Mazepin actually finishes?
Savage. There it is.
I think he when we were in Austin, he spun out in practice. It was just like, if he actually had a race where he didn't make a mistake, that was the rare exception. It wasn't usually that he was finishing very clean. Well, so then Stroll's crash into Albon, and already Latifi's out. So, and that's just, Williams and Albon coming back on the grid. Come on, my man, get your shit together. What are you doing back there?
Super disappointing for Albon, for sure.
And then, the Ferraris too. I think it just affected everything, and it was just, you know what? I'm loving the fact that he's making some mistakes, getting back of the grid. Sure, he crossed the finish line, but
but at what cost?
It's kind of coming true, and I'm not mad about it.
And you know what? I mean, Jack may be the OG Stroll hater, but I had some words today because I'm not saying he 100% cost Ferrari the win, but certainly contributed to it because his crash is the reason the session got yellow flagged, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little unclear on the difference exactly between a yellow flag and a safety car because they kept racing under the yellow flag. There was no safety car. I think because it was a second to last lap. But
because it was just one yellow flag. So if it's double yellow flag, that's when safety cars come out.
Really?
So the one yellow flag, and now I did have to research this because I'm not just pouring out this knowledge from nowhere. But one yellow flag, you can't overtake. And I don't even know that you have to reduce your speed as much as you just can't pass each other. So that's what really messed up Leclerc because he couldn't pass Verstappen and he had DRS. So it was the most inopportune time to get a yellow flag and to not have a safety car, which I actually think would have helped Leclerc because having an actual safety car go out really bunches up the pack. Whereas when you have a virtual safety car, you just have to stay within a speed delta of your laps, which is a little technical, but also a difference there. So the yellow flag and unfortunately Stroll's crash did really help Verstappen take the win there.
I'm a little bitter about that one. Oh, killer. But
I do want to mention one thing that I noticed too. I mean, we were talking and very complimentary of Guan Yu Zhou last race, and he ended up finishing still missed the points, so he didn't actually get into the points. It would have been fun to see him kind of pass Hamilton there at the end, but he had a great race. I mean, he started off in 18th, so back of the grid, and worked his way up into the points at one point, dropped a couple places again, but still looking really good, and hopefully Bottas's car situation doesn't get in the way in the future because he was obviously having a solid race for Alfa Romeo there.
And, I know we only had one Haas in the race today due to Schumacher's crash in qualifying, but Kevin Magnussen, he had a really good race. Ended up, I think, a couple places down from where he started. I think he started in 7th and ended up ninth. But he was fun to watch, too. He had some, really strong in the midfield above our boy Hamilton, which they were the two that they were racing on hards for a really long time. And under the first safety car after Latifi's crash, he was able to get in and get his tires changed. And that was kind of wild to watch. I feel like the Mercedes team did drop the ball on that one for Hamilton. They called him into the pit lanes after he'd already passed the pit entrance. Yeah. And then they closed because they were trying to get the cars, so the pit lane entry was closed and Magnussen was able to take advantage of it. But that was a miss on Mercedes, too.
Yeah, all around, a bad couple races for Mercedes. I'll be anxious to see what they can come up with when we're back.
I know, I really hope for Danny Rick and McLaren's sake, they're able to put on a good showing.
Yeah.
I feel like anytime it's a driver's home Grand Prix, you want to see them do well. So, fingers crossed. They looked better this weekend than last weekend. So hopefully, McLaren's slowly on the up and up.
Yeah, my heart can't take this back at the grid. Ricardo's car dying much longer. I need them to help him out a little bit. I need him to get some confidence back.
Anything else that we want to cover from the race today?
I think that covers it. All right, so I think because we covered some of the yellow flags, some of the regulation technicalities, maybe we spend this week, do some little research, and while we have the week off racing, we can spend the weekend and record an episode about some of the flags.
Yeah, I think some of the flags and some information about safety cars, that would be a good thing to cover next week.
If you guys have any other ideas about things that you want to hear us talk about, especially, we don't have a race every weekend. Throughout the calendar year, we'll be dropping in some other episodes talking about different topics. So if you have something you guys want to hear us talk about or you're curious on, drop us a note, email us, hit us up on our website or socials, hit that DM. We'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on all of our socials. Our website is gridgals.com. Our Instagram, grid.gals. So shoot us an email, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you.
And that's the checkered flag for this session. We'll see you back here on the grid next week.